Kirby Dick and Amy Ziering. You directed the documentary On the Record, which focuses on Drew Dixon, who is a music executive and one of multiple women who came forward with allegations of sexual assault against Russell Simmons. Now, in this film, we see that you'd been shooting with her for at the time when she ends up going forward with a New York Times article. So, how did you first learn about her story and decide to make this film about her experience?
Well, because we're on the chat with her, it was actually Liz Garbus knew Drew. And in the wake of Me Too, because of Kirby and I had done several films in the space of sexual assault, our cell phones started ringing. And I told Dan and Liz we were just collecting stories. We really didn't know what or why, but just now, the floodgates had opened and women were finally feeling safe enough to speak. And so Liz knew Drew, and Drew had confided in her and said, oh my God, all these headlines have really brought up some memories of the past I never thought I'd be revisiting in my lifetime. And Liz said, I know these filmmakers, I trust them with my life. And I know they're just reaching out just to talk to people. Would you like to talk with them? So that's how it started. And we met with Drew and were completely blown away by her story and blown away actually by what she was currently in the midst of grappling with. Like, okay, what do I do? Do I have an obligation to speak? What are the costs of my speaking out? Is it really safe now for women of color to speak? So we decided, along with Oprah Winfrey, to collectively collaborate on documenting her journey. And that's really how it started.
The difficulty of revisiting these kinds of events and recounting them on camera must have been incredibly difficult for her. How do you approach that with her and sort of get her comfort level to a point where she feels safe and you feel like she can open up to you?
Go ahead, Amy.
Well, first of all, when I spoke with her first on the phone and then when I met her to do the interview, I told her, and it was absolutely honest, it was like, your emotional health is more important than anything we're doing. And I mean that sincerely. If you want to stop in the middle of the interview, fine. If you want us to leave at any time, fine. Whatever is about, whatever you need, we're here for. We don't want to interfere. I don't want you to lose it. I don't want to lose a night's sleep thinking I in any way added to your trauma or pain. Nothing's worth it. Like, that's not why I'm doing this. And the second thing was, in order to sort of walk that walk, don't sign a release. Let's just shoot it. You're empowered, and we'll see how it goes, and we'll see how you feel. And if a month later you come back and say, this is something I want to do, great. And if it's something you never want to do, totally fine, no harm, no foul. So that's one way we've always operated. We're survivor first, survivor forward. The second thing we do, and we've done it so many times in making these films, is we create a really safe space. It's not an inquisition, it's a conversation. I make sure no one's in the room. That absolutely doesn't have to be. We try and find intimate spaces where people feel supported. We start and stop during the interview anytime people need to. And I think having that kind of compassion and understanding and empathy really helps people feel protected and empowered and able to sort of share in a way they might not feel safe otherwise. And a testament to that is, I can't tell you, after making some of these films, we get hundreds of thousands of letters from, survivors and friends of survivors and families. And I'm always super touched. I remember this one woman, she wrote and said, I wasn't in your film and you probably don't remember me, but you interviewed me XYZ. And I just wanted to tell you, I'm so grateful for having spoken to you, because it's the first time anyone ever listened and believed me. And it, set me on a path of healing. So just thank you. I'm not, and so it's a very, it's a really emotional, cathartic experience.
Yeah, and the reality is that this is not just our film. This is Drew's film and the other survivors as well. I mean, they take us into this experience. Obviously we've made a number of films about sexual assault survivors, but each time we make another film, they open up another world for us. They take us into it, and that's certainly what happened here.
And like Mary said about her film, and we're just sort of the conduit and the platform, but sort of letting their voices speak and share their wisdom.
And one thing that Drew is concerned about in the film is obviously coming out publicly against a media figure as well known and as powerful as Russell Simmons. It comes with its own inherent risks. This is why these people like him are able to get away with these things for so long. What were either of you kind of like thinking like cross the T's, dot all the I's even more like aggressively in terms of like your research and preparation, just in sort of considering that maybe backlash or pushback or against women we've seen in the past in these sort of situations?
Well, we always are very careful. I mean, journalistically, I mean, what's important to us is that, our films convey the truth. I mean, first and foremost, even before, being concerned about any kind of reaction or backlash or legal matter. But so, yes, I mean, we have a very rigorous fact-checking process that goes not only through, obviously, the broadcasters, but it also goes through our team as well. And we have a very experienced journalistic team that is, is part of this fact-checking process. First and foremost, we want to have it right. But secondly, once you go into this territory where you're telling somebody else's story and they're taking this great risk, you have to have, I mean, they're the ones who are putting themselves on the line. I mean, you also have to have courage. You also have to be willing to, if something happens, step up and defend them. And if, fortunately we've never been sued because there really has never been everything's been buttoned down. But if something happened, and things do happen, when you take on powerful people or institutions, we're going to stand by our survivors in every case.
But yes, I mean, the whole thing gave us pause, right? I mean, and the whole thing was excruciatingly painful. The film is about how difficult it is for women of color to speak for a myriad of reasons. It's not just it's whoever wants to sort of talk about a traumatic sexual experience. Like as one prosecutor said to me, think about it. How many times have you wanted to talk about intimate good sex with people? So why would people want to? It's a really difficult thing, a trauma to go through. So you've got that. And then, of course, women of color, really, you're going to go to the police and feel safe. Let's look how that turns out. Not always a good thing. On top of that, our racist culture has this horrific, legacy of racism against Black men, and one of the tropes is Black men are rapists. So do you really want to pile onto that and add to their pain? I mean, that's not incidental. That it's a life or death situation. So you carry that burden, and you carry the ways in which your own history in this country. You've had 4 centuries of you came over as a slave in which you were someone else's property, which they could do whatever they wanted with you, including rape. And you had no recourse to a system of justice. So you've got that history of trauma. So you have these manifold situations going against you. And what the film does is it really grapples in real time with Drew struggling with that bind. And it also torments and, it's hard for us. I wish that we didn't have to have a predator in the film, honestly, that it could have been told in a way where these women came forward and where you're documenting their stories. So it's just so complicated, and the film doesn't shy away from those complications, and is really, a testament to these women's courage that after all this film went through, which, if you read the history, it was not pretty or easy. No one backed down, and everyone said, we still want to go to Sundance. We want our story heard. And, Kirby and I were 100% behind that and said, we're not backing down either.
And you two have worked together, as you've mentioned, on films that are about sexual abuse, The Invisible War, The Hunting Ground. It's dispiriting how many stories there are that can be told about that in America. Is that subject matter that you want to continue to explore in future films and dig into more of just rape culture in America, the way it's so pervasive?
Well, you're right. I mean, it's completely pervasive. I mean, we live in a misogynistic society, and it's not something that, even though there is the Me Too movement has happened, and it's not, I mean, it's something obviously this is we should all be grateful for. There is misogyny is very deep. You just have to look at our current president to see that So this is something that, I mean, we don't only look to make films in this arena. I mean. Our last film was called The Bleeding Edge. It was about the medical device industry and the FDA and the problems there, and really it took on very powerful corporations like Bayer and Johnson & Johnson, and actually compelled them to take products off the market. So what we like to do, I mean, first and foremost, we want to make a good film, of course, and we look for a great story, but also we realize that, filmmaking and documentary filmmaking is a very powerful tool to explore issues of social justice. And certainly one of the ongoing and extremely important issues is issues around misogyny and sexual assault.
Yeah, and I wish there weren't so many stories to tell, and because people feel safe with us, they keep coming to us with their stories. So we feel obliged, as responsible citizens, to respond to that plea. I mean, that's why we made Hunting Ground. Students wrote us letters. We were doing something else entirely, and the same thing with Drew. When she told us her story, and then Oprah came on board, we were like, this is a story that hasn't been told and needs to be told, and we're all going to work together to tell it. So it's this combination. It's you don't come out the same afterwards. So it's not something I eagerly race towards, but I do feel a compunction. And the other thing I'll say about that is because of the ubiquity, as you said, of these crimes, and there's no shortage of stories to tell, and because of the trauma they cause and the long-term toll they take, not only on survivors, but as you see in On the Record and our other films, on their families, on society at large. I mean, women self-exile out of careers because of assault, and we lose their wisdom and their power and their cultural capital. I mean, and that's why you have 5 corporations that run the media now with 5 white guys who all think the same, making, 5 cartoon movies, superhero movies. I mean, it's not an accident. Trauma's in there, so if you imagine, if we actually start telling these stories and start listening to them and start changing our systems that protect predators, our culture would entirely transform. It'd be unrecognizable. You have 1 in 3 women, that are either assaulted or know someone who was. I mean, that's not a way to live.
Congratulations on the film. Thank you so much for making it and for talking to me today about it. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Daniel. Great
questions.
Appreciate the support.